She says she was not aware of the treatment her son was getting from the healer.
She told us the ancestors gave her a gift of being able to train drugs. She told us she started in 1996 to work with children. We trusted her because we could see a lot of children in the yard and we wanted our child to be helped. On Wednesday, my mother received a call from a social worker at Botterstown. She asked her about the child and told us that he has been bitten and is at Nelson Mandela Hospital. I wish I can die because I wanted help. I did not want my child to be beaten like this. This is not a punishment. He's only been there for 2 weeks.
The management of Parliament says it wants to expedite the process of getting alternative venues for committee meetings to return to physical sittings and stop with the virtual setting. Since the declaration of the state of disaster in 2020 due to COVID-19, Parliament has been conducting its business through the hybrid system. The fire in Parliament at the beginning of the year has also complicated the return of MPs to in-person sittings. Senior management at Parliament says they will also seek the assistance of government to find a venue that is suitable while the parliamentary buildings are being assessed and repaired. Acting Secretary to the Parliament, Baby Dayawa.
I do know that we have a plan for the 6th floor to expand some of the committees in there and then give you the detail of where these committees are, what the capacity is, because I know that with the NA Chief Whip Forum, we did actually do that. We should do it across the institution, look at the program of Parliament, allocate all the available committee space to the committee section.
And lastly, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has sent an email to his executives ordering a hiring freeze and job cuts, making the email his most direct message on the risks of a recession in the US. The South African-born tech billionaire has taken to Twitter several times in the recent past to share his thoughts on a possible recession. Musk said in a tweet that he believed that a recession in the world's biggest economy would be, quote, actually a good thing. It's been raining money for too long on fools, he said. Recapping the top story, ANC Treasurer General Paul Mashatile has told the party's provincial conference in Polokwane that the task to unite, renew and rebuild the ANC can't be postponed any longer. For SAfm News, I'm Eva Chipa. I'll be back at 7 with your next bulletin.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Giving you new perspectives and information with deep dive expert analysis of the biggest stories that shaped your world this week.
It is exactly 6 minutes, about to be 7 minutes after 6 p.m. It's a Friday, so that means it's time for This Week Today. My name is Oliver Dickson, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be in your company all the way up until 7. It's been an eventful week in the South African news cycle, in the global news cycle, really, and we're about to do a deep dive into this. There's so much we can be talking about. There's a lot to be discussing around the NPA's announcement that it will finally begin the prosecution of apartheid-related crimes. Do you think that will happen? Do you think the NPA has the teeth, the wherewithal, and perhaps even the resources to successfully prosecute that? That's a story I wanted to talk about, but bigger things than that happened in this week, right? The president was charged, or at least charges were pressed against the president by Arthur Fraser. The president hasn't officially yet been charged. And Arthur Fraser alleges that a robbery took place at the president's property and in excess of $4 million have been stolen. But more than that the president did not report this to SAPS. And more than that the president is party to kidnapping and bribery and all sorts of misdemeanors. Those charges are very serious. Facing criminal charges as a president calls into question your credibility. But the question is that a lot of people have been asking, rightfully so, is how credible are Arthur Fraser's charges, claims against the president? And is it not just politically opportunistic? It is very tempting to ask those questions, given that December's around the corner and ANC's an elective conference season. But just because something is politically opportunistic does not mean that it cannot also be something that is quite serious. right? Two truths can exist at the same time. It can be that one faction, and I'm not sure that Arthur Fraser belongs to a faction of the ANC, one faction of the ANC would try and use propped up charges to play politics in the lead up to an elective conference. That may be true, but some of those charges may have merits. Just because the timing is questionable does not make the merits of the claims questionable as well. We're going to be talking to ATM, African Transformation Movement. Mzwane Lemanya is going to join us very shortly, later on in the hour. And we're going to be talking about on the back of that, the African Transformation Movement has written to the public protector to investigate the president. They say the public protector needs to investigate whether or not the president has violated the executive ethics code by a number of things, not declaring, being party to, incomes, a set of income that has nothing to do with the work he does. They claim that the Constitution doesn't allow for the president to have any other income other than his presidential salary, and a bunch of stuff. We're going to be talking to ATM about that and asking them the question whether or not they should have waited up until the NPA made any sort of announcement whether or not they'll be prosecuting charges against the president, right? That's coming up in this hour. But what's been happening globally has also been very disconcerting to me. Within the last 2 weeks, 2 mass shootings happened in the United States of America. They clearly have a gun crisis. And we need to talk about it. That gun crisis is not all the way unrelated to us. It is very much a South African story as well. Gun violence in South Africa is on the up. But more importantly, we need to ask, what do we do about that? And how severe is the problem here? 57 South Africans are murdered every single day. Many of them by gun violence. 57 South Africans. Those are war zone numbers. Not even that many people have been dying in the Ukraine per day, but that's an ordinary day in South Africa. Do we have a gun crisis akin to that of the American gun crisis? And is at least the proliferation of guns off of the back of severe lobbying, and what should be done about it? We're going to be speaking to Claire Taylor from Gun Free South Africa. All of that and more is coming up here on This Week Today. Please do engage with me. You can tweet me. It is at Oliver_speaking. You can also find me on Facebook. It is Oliver Dickson. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can also just find us at SAfm Radio. We're streaming the show live on YouTube as usual. If you're new to the show, you can also watch the show live on YouTube or any of the SAfm social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook included there. And you can watch the show. You can share the link with friends and family, and they can listen in and watch the show as well. Of course, we're on your radio from 104 to 107 nationwide, or you can just simply stream us at SAfm Radio, safm.co.za. That is if you want to stream us live on the internet. But I am taking your calls, 011-714-2006, or you can just simply send us a voice note, 0614-104-107. Let us know what you make of some of the biggest developments in the country and the world around. My name is Oliver Dickson. Let's begin the show.
SMS SAfm now on 41391. At SAfm Radio and at Oliver_speaking on Twitter.
And joining me now from Gun Free South Africa is Claire Taylor. Claire, does South Africa have a gun problem akin to that of America? I want to start here before we speak about the American crisis. Do we have a gun crisis in South Africa?
We do. We have an epidemic of gun violence. Thank you, Oliver, for allowing Gun Free the opportunity to talk about it. You spoke about 57 people being killed in South Africa every day. At least, and we don't have the latest statistics on this, but at least 23 of them are shot and killed in this country every day in South Africa.
23 South Africans shot and killed. Are these by guns that we can trace, or is this a black market syndicate operating?
So we know that guns that are illegally held are more likely to be used in crime, and we know that there needs to be much more work done to mop up and recover these illegally held guns and make sure that they're destroyed. But if we're serious about addressing the gun epidemic in South Africa, we have to go upstream, and we have to stop guns leaking into the illegal market. And research done by a global agency looking at organized crime has confirmed what we already know, but this is new research, And what we already know is that licensed guns owned by legal gun owners are the biggest source of illegal guns in this country. That would include civilians as well as the state.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
So what that looks like is that somebody chooses to get a gun, for example, a civilian chooses to get a gun for self-defense, and that gun gets stolen, for example, lands up in the hands of a criminal and gets used repeatedly to commit crime against other innocent people. The other is that somebody chooses to get a gun, they hand it in to the police for destruction, and what we're seeing is that those guns are sold to criminals. So there's a whole lot of leakages happening, and we need to close those leakages in order to stop legal guns moving into the illegal market. But at the same time, we need to mop up and destroy the existing pool of illegal guns.
Am I understanding you right, that the South African Police Service is a great source of access to guns illegally?
That's right, they are. And so what we're really very optimistic about are provisions that have been put forward to amend South Africa's gun law, the Firearms Control Act, and a number of those provisions look at ways to increase oversight of weapons that are held by the state. And we think that's really important, and we support that, and we've put forward some further suggestions on how to improve that oversight capability of civilians.
Yeah. What can we learn from the United States of America? Their gun epidemic really is far worse than ours, right? Because what happens there is incidents, is cases of mass shootings in the hands of extremists, many would argue, and by patterns of the United States, by white supremacist extremists, right? Typically shooting up areas that are occupied by minorities, movie theaters, schools, shopping malls, that sort of stuff. We don't quite have that type of crisis, right? But we have a crisis nonetheless. What can we learn from there? Because I feel like we might be resting on our laurels here, and the problem might be escalating under our nose, that could one day we could wake up and have a United States level type of problem in terms of scope. But what can we learn from them currently?
So, Oliver, I think what we can learn from America is that the availability of guns increases the risk of gun violence, and the same thing is happening in South Africa. So as there are more guns that are available, so we're seeing our levels of gun violence increasing. To also say that in America, the type of weapon that is available makes a difference. So what we're seeing in the States in these mass shootings is that some kind of variation of an automatic AR-15 rifle is being used in many of the mass shootings. In South Africa, we don't have those types of weapons available. We have handguns. So 90% of the shootings that happen in South Africa involve handguns. And we do have mass shootings in South Africa. They're not the types of horrific mass shootings that have happened in America, in New Zealand, in Australia, in the UK. And they haven't happened yet at that kind of scale, but we still have them in South Africa. We can look to Khayelitsha, we can look to KZN, where and a mass shooting is defined as where 4 people are shot. They don't need to be killed, but 4 people are shot by a single gunman in a single incident, and that does not include the perpetrator themselves. And if you look, Gun Free South Africa keeps a map tracking gun violence in this country, and we see an increasing number of mass shootings happening in this country. And what's also of concern to Gun Free is that when people are shot, we've seen that they are shot multiple times. So it's not just a single shot anymore, it's that people are being shot 6, 7, 8 times. So the pattern of gun violence is changing as guns and ammunition become more available in South Africa. So there's a very different, we don't have the kinds of mass shootings that America has, but the type of gun that is available is the weapon that's used in violence.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you keep track of mass shootings in South Africa. Do you have numbers on hand that you can share with us to give us perspective on the scale of the problem?
We don't have. We do know that Khayelitsha has had a number of shootings, and there's been quite a lot of coverage around that in the past year. I think there have been 10 mass shootings that have happened in Khayelitsha if I'm not mistaken. But there are, for example, in KZN, there are a number of those as well. So if you look on our website, it's gfsa.org.za, we have a gun violence map, and that lists, and we do try and pull out mass shootings. I also just want to say, Oliver, that these mass shootings in America are a tiny percentage, really a tiny percentage of all the gun violence that happens in that country. And what's different in America is that by far the majority of gun violence is suicides, by far. And in South Africa, it's homicides, it's murder.
Yeah.
And that really has got to do a lot with the availability of weapons, but also our history of violence and the massive socioeconomic inequality in this country.
I want us to, for a second, just circle back to some of those legislative blockages that you spoke about, the reform needed in that particular space, right? So in America, what we learned from there, as you said, it's about how easily accessible guns are and the types of guns people have access to, right? So more organized criminal syndicates in South Africa obviously have access to automatic rifles. This is how we see cash in transit heists happening, right? Where do those guns come from? Because you can't buy it in a shop, right?
No. So that is, you're raising a really important point. So it is looking at where criminals get their guns from, and organized criminals use high caliber weapons, and it seems that they are smuggled into South Africa, and they seem to come through from Eastern Europe via neighboring countries. Mozambique in particular has been listed as being a conduit country for those high caliber weapons that are used in things like cash in transit heists, and also rhino poaching.
Wow.
But in terms of our more common crimes that affect us as South Africans, those are handguns, and the biggest source of those is weapons that are stolen from legal gun owners. And that could be, like I said, through theft, but it could also be through negligence. So, for example, research, which is old, and no subsequent study has been done to assess updated information on this, but reports of guns getting stolen, for example, from the cubbyhole of the car, and from not being stored properly. Our law requires that if the gun is not under your immediate possession, it has to be stored in a safe. And in fact, it seems that these guns are being stolen because they're not stored properly.
Yeah,
as well.
If I'm by law, if I'm a gun owner and my gun gets stolen, Claire, I have a legal duty to report that, right? Do we have an indication of how often that happens?
So we know that civilians report the loss or theft of 24 guns every day in this country. So
wait, what? Sorry, just 24 guns lost or stolen are reported every single day in South Africa.
Are reported as being lost or stolen, and you raise an important point in that we know that there are cases where civilians do not report loss or theft, especially when negligence has been involved. So, in fact, we don't know the true figure. To say that the police report loss or theft of an average 2 to 3 guns a day. So, by far, the biggest source of illegal guns in this country is civilians, and followed by the police.
And those 24 guns per day make its way into the illegal, often black market sale, making its way into the hands of criminals.
That's right, yes. So they land up in the hands of criminals. And the thing with a gun is it doesn't, unlike ammunition, ammunition gets used, and once it's used, you cannot use it again.
Right.
A gun you can use repeatedly. And we know at the moment that there's a huge demand for ammunition. For example, there was a big container load of ammunition that was stolen during the unrest in July, and there's been alerts put out to police stations to safeguard ammunition stores. So at the moment, we've got extraordinarily high levels of illegal guns in this country, and now the challenge is to get ammunition. And we think that because when there are shootings and people are shot multiple times, it's an indication that there is an excess of ammunition circulating. So really what Gun Free South Africa has been supporting is efforts to control ammunition as well. And to say that the proposed amendments to the Firearms Control Act actually propose outlawing homemade ammunition. So it no longer allows a civilian to manufacture their own ammunition, and we completely support that because that's one way of really strictly controlling basically what you need in order for a gun to be effective, and effective means to kill people.
Please crystallize to me just how, and I'm not asking you to give me advice on how to get a gun illegally, but please crystallize to me how easily it is to get an illegal gun in South Africa. Where do I go? How much would it cost me?
So again, the Global Initiative on Transnational Organized Crime has done quite a lot of work on that, and a researcher called Mark Shaw has also looked at the black market, and he has prices around that. Look, I've never tried to buy a gun illegally, but it seems because we have such a huge supply of them that it would be fairly easy to be able to access them, and that underscores how important it is that the police use crime intelligence as well as search and seizure operations to recover these weapons and destroy them. It's vital that they're destroyed. And what Gun Free South Africa is really pushing, we've been pushing for so long, is that there's civilian oversight, so that there's some kind of civilian body that goes into stores and makes sure that weapons that are listed as being there for destruction are in the store, and that they're actually visibly destroyed in front of oversight.
In the last minute we have, that's part of the action plan that needs to change. But what's the legislature that underpins that might need reform?
So the Firearms Control Act needs to basically raise the bar for gun ownership, and we strongly support efforts to no longer allow people to own guns for self-defense. They're very rarely used for self-defense, and in fact they're more often lost or stolen and used to commit and perpetrate crimes against innocent.
So you're saying to me right now, Claire, that there's no reason in South Africa to own a gun for self-defense purposes?
Absolutely. They are not effective at all. They put you and your family and innocent bystanders at greater risk. If you are armed at the time of an attack and you try and use your weapon, the perpetrator, if they are armed, will shoot at you. And if your gun gets stolen, it will be used to commit crimes against other people. To gun owners out there, if your stolen gun was at a crime, you are responsible for that crime. You chose to get this firearm. And that firearm was lost or stolen and is being used to commit crime in this country.
Esther Mahlangu's gun that was stolen is probably being used to commit crime as well. Claire Taylor, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Fantastic insights. You're making me a little bit uneasy, but thanks a lot for that. Really, really do appreciate it. Let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, we continue the show.
The SABC News Portal is your one-stop digital platform for all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest and breaking stories. Listen to all SABC radio stations live, including podcasts, and also watch the SABC News channel with clips and live streams of all the big news events. Simply download the SABC News app on your smartphone from the Play or App Store. SABC News, independent and impartial. Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAfm. Leading the conversation. Oliver Dickson on SAfm.
Hi, Oliver. Mass shootings in America are motivated by racial hatred. But here in South Africa, it's not mass shooting, but it's just, it's different from there. It's just criminality, because the shooting, maybe it's shooting only maybe 2-3 people. That's really here in Komastillefontein. Thanks.
Lots of gun owners in South Africa, especially Africans, leave their guns inside the cubbyholes of their vehicles, especially when they are at weddings and funerals. Now, a cubbyhole is not a safe because the car can easily be broken into and the gun got stolen. Kanjo.
Are you considering getting a gun as a South African living in a deeply violent country? Claire Taylor tells us there's no reason to get a gun for self-defense purposes. It's not effective. But is it? I'll be honest. It's something I personally have considered before. That interview just changed my mind. It's not a consideration I have anymore. Is it something you're considering? Give me a call, 011-714-2006, or simply just send us a voice note on the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614-104-107. Tweet me, it is at Oliver_speaking, or you can simply find me on Facebook, Oliver Dickson, and it is at SAfm Radio across all platforms. The show continues. There were by-elections that took place this week. Very important by-elections where some big swings happened in very critical wards and municipalities that indicates to a shift in the power balances across the country, right? Soweto was a very interesting picture for me. But I'm from the West Rand West City, where the ANC lost a very critical ward out in the further west side, closer to Carltonville, in Beggarsdale. They lost a ward to the ANC there. The ANC lost a ward to the EFF there. But some interesting patterns are emerging that tells a picture of an ANC continuously losing grip on the heart and minds of the local government voter. The ANC has about 54% of the national share when it comes to local government. Lost just about every major city in the country, which is about 60% of the population of the country, realistically speaking, because that's what metros are controlling, right? Then the question is, what are voters communicating? What patterns are emerging out of those numbers? Joining me now is an elections analyst, Wayne Suzman, who's on the line with us. Wayne, is it over for the ANC as a local government prospect?
Well, let's also look, because we're on the road to 2024 with the national and provincial elections. I think the ANC is in a difficult position, but I'd never write them off. And that's why there wasn't one clear trend which emerged from this latest round of by-elections. I'll give you near the home of TS Galaxy, there was a by-election in the Dr. J.S. Boroko municipality, right, where the ANC's vote share actually went up. And that's obviously more of a rural area. So yes, the ANC have big challenges in Gauteng. The province is certainly in play in 2024. There's a chance that the ANC could lose control of the Rand West City municipality after losing the safe seat in Beckersdale. So the ANC has a lot to be concerned about. The trends are not very good for them in urban areas and relatively densely populated parts of the country.
Right.
But they held on to Soweto. They held on in Mvoti. But yeah, the picture's not very strong for them right now.
Let's talk about, and I want us to talk about what happened in Soweto, but let's start in the West, right? Rand West City lost the ward to the EFF, and you say there's a chance they might lose control over that municipality altogether. How strong are those chances? My understanding, it's already a coalition government as it stands, with the support of the Randfontein People's Party and the support of the Patriotic Alliance. What's the balance of power looking like over there?
So, Mr. Dickson, I love local government politics, and I spend many hours trying to understand what's happening. To be honest, it's not clear whether the Randfontein People's Party are actually in the government. What is clear is that the Patriotic Alliance and the African Independent Congress are in coalition with the ANC. And with the loss of this one seat, the ANC now only has 34 out of the 69 seats, and will definitely need the Randfontein People's Party or a ZAPO to remain in power there. And that's the challenge, because let's also remember, a municipality like Rand West City, the ANC had a solid control for many, many years and could give positions in the mayoral committee to the hard-working councillors and the councillors with the most talent.
Yeah.
Now with the ANC losing power, there's A, less councillors, and there's B, or having to rely on coalitions. There's also less positions to share out to the ANC. They have to give out to some of the smaller parties.
Right.
And that's very, very frustrating.
My understanding is that 2 of those 10 mayoral member committee seats are to the Patriotic Alliance right now. It really just comes down to whether or not Mayor Gladys Khoza can convince the leader of the RPP over there, Ali Musina, to come on board as an MMC and then give them that coalition vote. Is there? We don't know much about the RPP, right? They're not a particularly popularly known organization outside of the streets of Randfontein. But from what we may glean from their social media accounts, is there a possibility that they might give the ANC that one additional seat support?
Well, definitely, because particularly if there's a mayoral committee position at play. Right now, the only smaller parties, and they are much smaller, the ANC is by far the biggest party in the coalition. So let's take the ANC. They have about, I think now, I forget the number, I think they have got about 31 seats now. The Patriotic Alliance got 2 seats. And the AIC, the African Independent Congress, has got 1 seat. Now, the AIC have a mayoral committee member, so a seat. That's 1 person getting 1 seat. Patriotic Alliance, 2 councillors, 2 seats. The ANC probably only has, for their 31 councillors, only get 7 seats. So the small parties have a lot of bargaining power. South African politics is very, very different after the 2021 local government elections, and the ANC and, of course, the DA and the IFP have to go to these smaller parties and horse trade, and this makes our politics very interesting. And can coalitions work? Sorry to get sidetracked, but that's another side point. I made the big point on election day in 2021 that many South Africans who lived in areas under coalition control would have not wanted a repeat of coalitions, because my opinion was that their experience of those coalitions wasn't very positive, yet many more South Africans woke up on the 2nd of November living under coalition government. So this is something which South Africans have to become more accustomed to, and after these let's just bring it back to the by-elections, after the by-election result in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Northern Cape, and in Gauteng, it looks like many more provinces will be under coalition control, potentially under coalition control in 2024.
What does voter turnout tell us? Are people just becoming, apathetic? That's to say, not turning up for elections, therefore the ANC losing a significant share where those losses are registered? Or are people still turning up, just voting in a different direction?
That's a great question. In 3 of the 5 by-elections, turnout was higher than the 2021 local government elections.
I mean,
in the town of Carnarvon, in the Northern Cape, it was much higher percentage-wise. So that is very encouraging to me, that South Africans realize that there is power in their vote. Even if it's voting for the same party, whether you voted for the ANC or the DA or IFP forever, you're still going out, and more people are going out and participating in democracy. That's very exciting for me.
Yeah. Where the ANC won, they didn't win any new seats. They just retained the seats they already had. But the DA was able to take a seat away from the ANC, specifically in the municipality you're speaking about in the Northern Cape, with a 70% plus voter turnout.
That's
a
correct.
Switch from the ANC to the DA is a spectacular one. What happened?
Yeah, a few things happened. So first of all, in the grand scheme of things, Carnarvon, which is a beautiful part of the world, but there are very few voters there. So you can say this means nothing, the DA got lucky. But what is key? So first of all, how did the DA win? The Freedom Front weren't on the ballot, and the but it's one thing having your party not on the ballot, it's another thing getting those people out to vote.
Right.
Secondly, there was a local party, and by the way, this isn't the majority of people in this ward. The overwhelming majority of people in this ward are coloured South Africans, are coloured voters, not white voters.
Yeah.
There was a local party which stole a lot of DA votes in the last election. They came out for the DA. The local party actually has the mayoral chain, another fascinating development. Many of these civic movements now have the mayoral chains in some of our municipalities. And then the DA had a compelling candidate, which appealed more to voters, and that's how they won. But I want to say one thing, that yes, this is very few people live in Carnarvon. I'm currently in Ward 73 in Johannesburg, to disclose my location. There's probably more people in my ward, almost double the amount of people in my ward compared to that whole municipality of Karreeberg.
Right.
Having said that, my big takeaway, Mr. Dickson, is that I followed the ANC in the Northern Cape for many, many years. And the ANC in the Northern Cape were remarkable at fighting elections and by-elections. And yet, in the space of in the last two Northern Cape by-elections, the ANC has lost a seat in Hartswater on the northwest border in the Northern Cape, in the town of Pampierstad, and now they're losing a by-election in Carnarvon.
Didn't they lose Rimfasmark as well?
Rimfasmark, I don't think they lost a by. Did they lose a? I don't think they lost a by-election in Rimfasmark. Okay. I remember that maybe you caught me out there. I don't think.
Sorry, my recollection of it is also a bit vague at the moment, but I vaguely remember something to the effect of a shift happening there. But I want to ask this: local government candidates are becoming a lot more, and I use the word independent here, not to say that they're independent of their party, but local government voters typically now seem to engage more with who the local government candidate is and not who the party is. Does that mean bigger political figures, such as provincial government figures, such as national government figures, are unable to sway votes? Saul Zamani is popular amongst colored voters in certain parts because he relates to them, he appeals to them, but it seems that he's still not winning the hearts and minds over there.
So with regards to the Northern Cape, so the ANC threw everything but the kitchen sink here.
Yeah.
I know, well, so look, you can look at a headline, but what's interesting for me as an analyst is like what becomes a trend line. And there's not that many by-elections in Northern Cape. And I would say that what's emerging as a trend line here is the first thing I said, that the ANC has lost that incredible ability to show up at by-elections despite infighting and just come together and win that ward for the black, green and gold colors of the ANC.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is the candidates. So they expelled their mayor in Pokwani, that was in Hartswater. That person joined the EFF. He was popular in his ward. He won the seat back. The DA chose a candidate in this by-election which clearly energized voters. So I do think more and more candidates do matter. And by the way, just to go quickly, and sorry to jump back to your home municipality, I think you said at the start of the show you're from Randwest.
Randwest, yes.
Is that there, the ANC, for the second election in a row in this ward, chose an unpopular candidate, not the candidate the ANC structures and the community wanted. And that's resulting in voters saying, we are going to vote elsewhere, and you need to do a better job by listening to us.
It's the same word Nomvula Mokonyane told, we don't need your dirty votes, all those years back. Just a final question. The ANC retained 3 of its wards, but at lower margins than in 2021. Does it mean that those wards are up for grabs in 2024? Well, 2024 is a national government election, but 2026 when we have another local government election?
Without a shadow of a doubt. And this is the fascinating thing of local government elections, not just for the ANC, but also, and we probably don't have time, the Mvoti by-election in Greytown in KwaZulu-Natal. Fascinating. The ANC losing ground in their stronghold, and the IFP picking up, the IFP having a lot of momentum, eating into an ANC stronghold in the ward. But why didn't the IFP win the ward? Because they weren't able to get their voters out in their stronghold.
Right.
So what I'm seeing here, Mr. Dickson, and I hope I can call you Oliver the next time. If
you can call me Oliver right now.
Is that incumbents need to do a better job. So even though the IFP didn't represent the ward, the IFP voters in this ward were saying, IFP in our stronghold, in our village, your candidate's not doing enough. So you're seeing votes go everywhere. And this is very relevant in 2026, but also going to be relevant in 2024.
All voters are holding all parties to a higher level of accountability, it seems. In Gauteng, the provincial government the ANC leads with 1 seat in the provincial legislature. If this pattern persists, the ANC is out of government, is a minority government or an opposition party, 2024?
That's correct. I could say that I'm quite a cautious person. It drives my wife mad at times. I think we can safely say that right now, on this cool winter's evening in Gauteng, that a coalition government is on cards for the residents of Gauteng in 2024.
Wayne Sussman, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Wayne Sussman, who's an elections analyst. Local government elections results are fascinating. It paints a picture of where the hearts and minds of South Africans truly lie in their relation to service delivery, because that's really what local government elections reflect, and so did those by-elections. What do you make of some of the trends that are emerging in the local government elections and some of the patterns that are emerging? Give me a call. The number is 011-714-2006. You can also send me a WhatsApp text on 0614-104-107. Tweet me, it is at Oliver_speaking. Let's have a listen to some of your voice notes and some of your calls on the other side of this.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAfm 105 FM in Polokwane. At SAfm Radio and at Oliver_speaking on Twitter.
Good evening, Oliver. Yes, I've been listening to the topic, but I got it half around the gun. I also want to own a gun, but now, just because of now the laws, there's so much laws pertaining to the gun, procuring a gun. So that in itself for me, it's a problem. So I'm actually not considering it, but it's something one must have actually, because crime in South Africa is very high. For one, now we stay in the Northern Cape. Crime is there, it's there, but it's not that rife compared to the metros. But it's there. Now, on the issue of the municipality, the elections, here in the Northern Cape, we have lost Karreeberg, and it's not nice, It means now the voters are not seeing the ANC as their party now. I'm also concerned. Tuelo Kimberley.
Good evening, Oliver Dickson. This is Simi from Soweto. Yes, I'm one of the South Africans who's considering getting a gun for self-defense. Why? Because the government only assigns one policeman for every 336 citizens. So the government isn't willing to protect us. So we must protect ourselves. And as for gun-free South Africa to claim that our guns will be taken away from us, the reality is that majority of the guns that are used by criminals are being stolen from police safes, are being given to them by corrupt police officers. Gun owners are being trained on how to use guns responsibly and how to secure them. Gun-free South Africa must get their facts straight.
Hello, sir. This is Mr. Sierra speaking from Wepener in the Free State. I do think we have a gun problem. Even if there was a call for people to submit their guns without being punished, I think there are still those people who are stubborn, who are still having their guns with them, and most of them are surely they are illegal. And remembering that, without discriminating, that we have some illegal firearms brought by immigrants, people who come from other countries. So considering those factors that I have outlined, surely we are having a problem, and we need to attend it as fast as we could, so that we can avoid further more deaths of our people.
Thank you so much for those voice notes. Let's take one of your call. Z out in Nigel. Good morning. Good evening. Sorry.
Good evening, Oliver.
What's on your mind? Go ahead.
I may be misconstrued, for what I'm going to say, and I may be bashed by some of my fellow listeners here. But I'll tell you what, I don't think it's worth it owning a gun. I really don't think it's worth it. I'll tell you why. I used to own one. I owned a firearm for about 6 consecutive years, and I was carrying it on my waist all the time. I spent a lot of money buying ammunition in the shooting range, practicing every weekend, going to specialized shooting ranges, shooting moving targets, doing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Waiting for the moment when I was going to be able to defend myself in the street. And guess what? That moment never came. That's the first point.
Surely that's a blessing. That's a blessing, right?
Yes, it's a blessing. Let me latch on to what you're saying. It's a blessing because after you shoot someone, the pictures that you see when you go to court to attend that case after your gun has been taken away for ballistics, and it's there, at the ballistics place for weeks or months on end, and you are gunless. And that's when you need it the most after you've shot someone, by the way, because these people or the relatives might come for you of the people that you've shot, whether you were right or wrong. In that sense, that's the point number one. It's not worth it. Secondly, you spend a lot of money practicing and buying ammunition if you do practice. If you don't practice, you will end up, chances are you might shoot a wrong person in a busy street. When you pull a gun, you might end up, shooting randomly and killing someone, who was not even involved in the fray that you were trying to defend yourself from. So it's not worth it. Eventually, I gave it up.
Right.
I went to the
That's
police.
An interesting perspective.
Gave up my firearm license. The last point that I want to make quickly is that most of the people, not all people, but most of the people that own firearms are angry people, I think we need to deal with a certain measure of anger in our minds and hearts and find out deeply, look deep in our hearts and find out as to what it is that we really want to defend ourselves from. And ask ourselves the real question as to what is crime. When you jump a red robot with a firearm in your hip, wanting to prevent a crime if someone is trying to rob you, when you jump a red robot, is that not a crime?
Yeah.
When you kill someone in an accident after jumping that red robot, is that not a crime? Does that not equate to the same thing? We need to ask ourselves very deep questions about firearms.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say. But what I wanted to say is that I gave mine up, and I did not have to look after it. I did not have to have a firearm on my hip ready to shoot someone. I knew I was good at it because I was practicing literally every weekend. I knew I was good at it.
That's an interesting perspective, Mzi. Thank you so much for your call, man. Really, really do appreciate it. That's Mzi out in Nigel. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we speak to the ATM president, Vuyoleta Zungula.
This week, today, with Oliver Dickson.
The ATM put out a statement with regards to President Cyril Ramaphosa being accused by Arthur Fraser of having, one, concealed a crime specifically related to corruption and not reporting it, and two, apparently $4 million, in excess of $4 million has been stolen from the president's property. That's more than 60 million rand in South African terms. A number of questions are to be asked. I can't think of a single business in South Africa, assuming this farm is a business, a single business in South Africa where on property they retain 60 million rand in cash. Not a single. Why on earth does the president have that much money on any of his properties to begin with and not in a bank? Does SARS know about this money? That's a real question to ask. How was this money made? Was it trophy hunting? Perhaps it was, right? That's a common thing. Was it the sale of game? Perhaps that's a common thing. But if it's all cash sales, how can we trust that it was declared, and how can we trust that the president paid tax on those sales? These are some serious questions I have personally. But the ATM, African Transformation, have constitutionally related questions that are a bit more serious. In their statement, they say, we draw your attention to Section 96(2)(a) of the Constitution, which prohibits members of cabinet from undertaking any other paid work. It is the view of the ATM that anyone with cash amounting to millions of US dollars can only be involved in trading whose legitimacy needs to be established. Whether the trading is legit or it constitutes paid work and thus a violation of the said section, please investigate. Violetta, if I own a business, it's not the same as me as having a job and getting paid from that particular job. I may own the business, I may not necessarily take a salary from that business. That's an important technicality.
Hi, Oliver. Evening to you and to your listeners at home. Look, for us, Oliver, what is important is that the public protector must investigate. Like you said, there's a lot of questions, very serious questions that emanate, number one, from the allegations by Arthur Fraser, number two, from the response in a statement by Ramaphosa. Therefore, what we want as the ATM is a thorough investigation to be made so that if there's any violation of the Executive Members Ethics Act or any other relevant legislation, then there needs to be appropriate action that is taken on the president, including your definition now on whether it is a business or it is paid work. Because remember, when Ramaphosa took public office in 2015, his commitment was to hand over all of his private business interests to a blind trust or someone else to run them. However, in this case, he himself is saying that this issue was reported to him, not the management of the trust that is managing, the whatever business activity that is happening in his farm, but the reporting of the incident happened to him, meaning it's somewhat actively involved. So that is what we want. We want to get to the bottom of what transpired and whether there has been any violation of the relevant legislation, because we want a president that is beyond reproach. We want a president that can give confidence that he's not acting in the private interest of anyone, rather he's acting in the best interest of the people of the country, respecting the Constitution, not a president that could be seen to have double interest of the private interest as well as the public interest.
Yeah. Violetto, what do you say to someone who accuses you of playing ANC factional politics here? Because quite interestingly, and maybe this was strategic on your part, right? Because when you report any member of the executive to the public protector for violations, specifically for the Executive Members Act, the public protector by law must give you a response in 30 days. That's a month from now. That seems to me that you're expediting the political implications on Ramaphosa on this. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but what's your response to anyone saying that you are once again reinforcing the idea that you are here to play ANC factional politics?
That is absolutely false. People are so hell-bent on protecting Ramaphosa. One people said even if, Ramaphosa would steal someone's car, actually the person whose car was stolen would be arrested for negligence. Here, as a party that is in parliament, it is our sole responsibility to hold the executive accountable. And by asking the public protector to investigate, we are doing exactly that. Any other party that has, that is staying true to their oath of office, which is when they were sworn in parliament, would have acted the same way as we have acted as the ATM. Therefore, people must not, I understand people are disappointed by the performance of Ramaphosa in leading the country. But they must understand, to us, Ramaphosa is a person that is failing to lead our country. And
okay.
To us, he's not a savior.
Okay.
For us, Ramaphosa is a president that we should hold accountable for any and everything that he does.
Okay, so before we get into a referendum on Ramaphosa's performance, which is a sidebar, let's speak about the case at hand. And the reason why I'm asking that question around political expedience and playing factional politics is because this statement seems to be quite in a hurry. Shouldn't you have waited for the NPA to at least say something?
There's prima facie evidence currently from the statement released by Arthur Fraser and what the affidavit contains. Now, it is our responsibility as a party. We're not saying anything. We're not saying it's guilty. We're just saying public protector. We think there might be a violation of the certain sections of the Constitution and this particular act. Investigate. That's all we are saying. Therefore, people must not be, rushing to defend Ramaphosa and waiting to say anything. For us, what is important is that the NPA must investigate. If there's any other law enforcement agency or any other institution that has got the powers to investigate, they must continue to investigate.
Okay.
They do not need for the NPA to finish whatever work, because we don't know what if the NPA starts doing this work in 2030. We do not want, this to be to stay in the public domain without having any sort of finality when it comes to investigations, especially from an independent institution like the public protector.
Violetto Zungula, President of ATM, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's have a listen to some of your voice notes that's come through on the WhatsApp voice note line. What do you make of some of the conversations we've had on the show today? Let's have a listen.
Hello, Radio 2000. It's George here from Pretoria. So
yeah,
I
but
think,
George, it's SAfm.
People who say they must cancel this thing of guns, we mustn't own guns for protection. I think there are people who stay in townhouses. They got security when they sleep. They don't worry about whether someone will come to attack them with their family, because they know there's security outside for 24 hours. But for us who stay in villages, we are at risk always. So for me, I really, even now, whatever she said, she can't change me. I really need a gun to protect my family, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family, because I can't let someone come into my house at night while I'm sleeping, end up not knowing how to protect my family.
Yeah.
So people that are getting raped, killed inside their houses by thugs, while the man is there, you can't protect your family. So I'll take that chances. I'll need a gun to protect myself. So those who got securities, because even those ministers, they will just put laws which they don't affect them because they got security. Others, even lot of things are happening out there. So people have to protect themselves.
Oliver and fellow SAfm listeners, good evening. My name is Tulani Nzima in Croydon. You know, Oliver, whilst you are busy talking about the results, the by-elections and so forth, what does it say about the current administration of the ANC? Because this is a direct reflection. Remember when during the Zuma administration, when the ANC was losing votes, the blame was put squarely on his doorstep. Now, why are people divorcing, including analysts? Why are they not saying it is the Ramaphosa administration that is failing to garner votes for the ANC? I thank you.
Yeah, that's a real concern. Thank you so much for indulging me. It's been an honor and a pleasure being in your company. And we will continue these conversations next week, taking a look at the biggest issues of the week. Do continue to tweet me and engage me on any of these conversations. It's at Oliver_speaking on Twitter, Oliver Dickson on Facebook. It's been a pleasure being in your company. Stay safe and have a fantastic weekend. Cheers.
Independent and impartial. This is SAfm News.